Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Truth. I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hessen, back with a brand new episode here on The Truth. Back once again with my brother Lucas. Lucas, how are you doing here today?
I'm good. We got baseball back. Got some spring training today. Twins play spring training tomorrow. I'm excited. Then I got to go to Hawkeye basketball game on Saturday and Sunday for women's. So lots of sports going on.
The Twins I saw are starting Zebby, right?
Yep.
Starting Zebby Matthews. Who they playing, the Braves or somebody?
Chris Sale.
Okay. So it should be a good matchup there, but we are getting to the nitty gritty of the upcoming baseball season. We are getting there. It seems like quicker than we know. Obviously, we're in February 21st, and the opening day is what, technically like less than a month away because of the Soul
Yeah.
Series or wherever they're playing. So baseball is coming up here, which is an exciting time for a lot of people. And today we're going to continue our avoid series. There we go. Where we're going to be avoiding 6 players, 3 each from us at each position group. And today we have 3 more shows left. First things first, we're going to do shortstops. We're going to give you guys 6 shortstops to avoid for whatever reason. Lucas, go ahead and give me your first shortstop you're avoiding.
Yeah, first guy for me is Willy Adames. We kind of talked about this before, but the thing I noticed for him is just a new year and new contract. And he never, he was, 2019, 2020, 2021 even, he wasn't really a massive name, but ever since he took off in Milwaukee, he's been a really hot commodity. He was one of the most coveted free agents this year and ended up signing in San Francisco. Another kind of niche thing for me is the ballpark that he's going to. I think it's Oracle. I don't remember if they've changed it again, but Oracle Park is considered like the third worst for right-handed hitters. So I think that's really going to bring his power numbers down. He hit 32 home runs, 112 RBIs, which is definitely good, but I don't know if he's going to be able to continue that. And again, another small thing, kind of nitpicky here, but I noticed that he had 21 stolen bases last year, but he's going to a San Francisco team that does not steal a lot, and he's also entering his age 30 season, so I think that might take a little versatility away from his game. Over 600 at-bats, he proved himself for sure. I just don't think that, his ADP is around top 5 or 5th-round draft pick. I don't think that's necessarily a terrible slot, but I wouldn't go that early. But I just don't think he's going to replicate the production he had the past 2 years in Milwaukee. He hit 250, so you can kind of see he's kind of maybe regressing a little bit. He's going to have the power numbers, but if the power numbers aren't there for him, I think he's going to lose a lot of this game.
Yeah, I had Adames as well. I obviously am going to talk about somebody different, but I kind of felt like the same thing with Adames there. Again, we talk about Willy Adames. We talk about a lot of these guys, but particularly guys like Adames. Obviously, going for San Francisco now, it's going to be interesting to see kind of what it looks like in that ballpark and kind of what that lineup's looking like as a whole. A lot of young, interesting pieces there. For me, the first guy I'm going to go with is Anthony Volpe. Now, Anthony Volpe is only 23, so he's still relatively young, and he's obviously had a good overall, I guess, start to his career. His first year I felt like was a little bit better. Obviously on the power side, 21 home runs, 60 RBIs, both seasons in the 60 games, or 160 games, excuse me, 60 RBIs. I would have liked to see a little bit more production. I know where he hits in the lineup. It's not necessarily a calling card, but 60 RBIs, especially for a guy like Volpe in that Yankees lineup in 160 games, is a bit concerning. On top of that, he did drop 9 home runs from 21 his rookie season to 12 last season. The weird thing was his average went up, though, from 209 to 243. So kind of some inconsistencies here from Volpe. I think, obviously, at this shortstop position as well, I would like to see him continue trending upward with average. I'm not saying that power is necessarily a big thing, but I think a lot of people are just kind of jumping the gun on Volpe, especially with the fact that he did drop in power a little bit, and he's still sticking with those 60 RBIs. Also averages a strikeout a game, which I know is easier said than done in Major League Baseball, but it's one of those things too, like, every game he's going to have one strikeout, which is going to in turn hurt the average and his chance to score for runs and all that stuff. So for me, I think Volpe's a good player. I think he's young, but I think I need to see a little bit more consistency. That average needs to get consistently at like 250 and above, and consistently in that, 15 to 20 home run range and maybe get up to 80, 90 RBIs on the season. What about your second guy?
Second guy for me, Ezekiel Tovar in Colorado. You look at his numbers from the get-go, and they look really good. He had 45 doubles, 26 home runs, 78 RBIs isn't terrible. It's a little low considering, he had over 600 at-bats and playing Coors Field, but the numbers to me that really scare me is 200 strikeouts. 200 strikeouts in any aspect of the game is a lot, and the fact that he's only 23 is a little concerning. He also only had 23 walks, so he's almost averaging 10 strikeouts per walk, which, again, at such a young age, you maybe can hope he can develop a little bit and kind of do change your approach, do the same thing. But I mean, year before that, 25 walks to 170 strikeouts. Like, he's trending in the wrong direction. So that scares me. Only 6 steals. He hit 270, which isn't bad. I just think that, especially for me, like before I looked at his numbers, I thought Tovar was like a really good shortstop. But again, he's playing in Coors Field. I think, again, kind of like who you mentioned, I already forgot. Volpe, he's a good player, but I don't think he should be drafted as high as he might be getting picked. I just think he's kind of due for a slump, and this is kind of the year that maybe if he does the same kind of thing, I'll be even more down. But if he kind of shows, okay, that was just my sophomore slump, then I'll have some more investment in him.
This one's gonna hurt you, but it's Carlos Correa is my second guy. Look, Carlos Correa is one of those guys that, being a Twins fan, I've never really liked Correa just because I don't like the Houston Astros. I don't like Bregman, Altuve, Correa, that core three that I like to call the cheaters. He has grown on me a little bit just because obviously playing for Minnesota for now, I think his fourth season. It's one of those things like you eventually get accustomed to a guy like Correa, but it's been a weird tenure for Correa. Obviously, I think expectations were through the roof. Last year, I think it was, where he had like the two failed physicals. One was with the Mets, one was with the Giants. I felt like the Twins, in a way, settled with Correa when they paid him all that money. I wouldn't say settled in a bad way, but they were like, all right, he failed two physicals. Obviously, they weren't seeing something there. And then he comes to Minnesota again, plays in 80 games with I think the same thing, plantar fasciitis. It was weird because he played in 80 games. He hasn't played in a full like 160. The highest he's played with Minnesota is 136. And that's really how it's been throughout his career. He hasn't gotten higher than 148, or 153, which is good, but that's happened once in his career. But last year, 14 home runs, 54 RBI is not too bad. Had a really good average at 310. I remember there was that one stretch of games where it seemed like he had like 8, 9, 10 hits in a row and every at bat that he was getting. But my biggest thing is, can he stay on the field? I think he's one of those guys that people are going to draft lower in their drafts, and I think that would be an acceptable place. But I don't think you can expect at this point in 30-year-old Carlos Correa, at least on the offensive side, to step up to the plate and have success. At least until he's able to go back on the field like he was for 130, 140 games. But it seems to be a rare occurrence with him, and this has been like a nagging injury for a couple of years now. What about your third guy?
Yeah, last guy for me, this one hurts to say in a different reason just because he was on my team, but CJ Abrams. I mean, we all know what happened. Like, I think it was the last week of the season. He didn't like sports bet, but he was like in the casino all night. So it's kind of like, I don't know, gambling's this kind of thing. You just kind of compare it to like candy and processed foods and all that. Like, you shouldn't do it, but you end up doing it, right? Bad for you, but you end up doing it. That's kind of what CJ Abrams fell into. I mean, he wasn't terrible. 20 home runs, 65 RBIs, 30 steals. 747 OPS is good, but he's only a 700 OPS hitter, and that's something that I don't love. He's kind of like Chris Davis. His career average is 246, and 2024 hit 246, so you know what you're going to get. But kind of similar to Tovar, except a little more proven. I think that Abrams is a name that people really like, and ADPs have him as like a top 8 shortstop. I think shortstop's one of the strongest positions in the MLB, and I think it's just filled with young guys and a lot of guys in the minor leagues that could fill up. I just don't think that Abrams is worth that pick, especially considering the uncertainty at the end of the season. He was even sent down at AAA, like disciplinary wise. I don't know if that's going to hurt his production, but from a coaching standpoint and ownership standpoint, I think that may kind of hurt how he's played and playing on a Nationals team that I don't think is going to be very good. So I wouldn't pick him as high as I did last year, but again, not a bad player. I just don't like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, CJ Abrams is a weird guy as far as fantasy is concerned. Obviously, he's slated 8 right now for shortstop rankings, which I think is actually a little bit too high for him. Obviously, just because I don't think he's necessarily proven himself. I think he's shown glimpses of it, but he hasn't shown consistency, especially at times on the defensive side. And then you mentioned add insult to injury for him in the Washington National season last year. He was gambling. It wasn't sports gambling, but it was like the fact that he was like up all night or something like that, like before a game. Like, it just obviously was not a good look for anybody for that matter. And then obviously we talk about how gambling's came into baseball and all sports for that matter, how it's kind of changed the complexion there. It just is a bad look all around. And I think people say, oh, it doesn't affect his play, it doesn't affect this, that, but it affects fantasy managers, it affects the franchise, the organization, because you're thinking of a guy now who's dealing with off the field stuff, who is supposed to be one of your future guys, a future leader, and he's out doing stuff like this. Like, it's just not a good look. On top of that, he isn't a guy that's necessarily jumped off the page to have that like breakout season that I think he should have to be ranked at the 8th spot at the shortstop position. And he's very young and very immature. He was one of my guys as well. I just wanted to touch on him briefly. The other guy I'm going to go with, and this is going to hurt females out there, but it's Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson, obviously an interesting career thus far. Spent the majority of it in Atlanta for 7 years, the last 2 seasons in Chicago. It's not that Dansby Swanson's been bad, because he's been one of those guys. Like, I feel like the shortstop position it's hard to come by to get good elite shortstops, because obviously they're really known for their glove, their defensive side. Not necessarily known for their bat, especially on the power side, but sometimes get the job done. Dansby, however, for Chicago, it's been kind of, just meh. 242 last year, 16 home runs, 66 RBIs, which is great. But then you look at the 3 years prior: 2021, 2788, 2022, 2596, 2023, 2280. Had a drop, and he played in 2 more games than the year before. So the only thing I'm worried about with Dansby Swanson is this continued potential for him to drop in stats, being age 31, going into the season here with Chicago. It's just, I think that's the biggest concern. Where he's at right now as far as fantasy value and fantasy relevancy is concerned. I think it definitely, at 19 is a spot where there is some skepticism, but there's also optimism. It's kind of one of those weird things where it's like you don't really know what you're going to get. And usually when there's guys like that, I try to avoid them as much as possible. But he's a good player, has potential to bring it up, like kind of like how he did at periods of time through Atlanta. I just don't see it happening this year. I see more of a downward trend. I think people are going to be overpaying for whatever reason, whether it's because of his talent or his looks. I never know. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter, The Truth as one, to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharp through focus and memory? Look no further than Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Blended Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity while also maintaining ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15, for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one I love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by my brother Lucas. Take care and good night.